Hey everybody, I'm here with Orvar Halldorsson, the Director of Product Design at Mojang. How you doing today, Orvar?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Before our interview started, me and Orvar had some technical difficulties. As you can see, the camera's not focused enough, but we just had to get started. How's your day been?
It's been good. I live here in Washington State, and this is kind of the time of year when it gets really nice outside. So it's one of those like challenging things of staying focused on work.
Yeah,
But we power through. We have a lot of things that we want to get done. We have a lot of exciting things in flight. So yeah, we just work even though it's so nice outside because we get you know we get this nice time during summer, but then most of the other months of the year are kind of gloomy. So
yeah. Orvar and I actually met at GDC. I took a picture for you in front of the GDC sign. Uh,
yeah.
and this is our second conversation ever, but more than a lot of the other people I interview for a lot of the other interviews. It's my first ever conversation with the person. But
Oh,
um,
interesting.
but I'm gonna get started with the questions here. Now, I'm actually threw you a curveball. In a lot of my interviews, I do the questions, and then at the very end, I have a blind ranking that I do sort of for fun. But somebody mentioned to me that it would be kind of a good icebreaker to do the blind rankings throughout. So we got a blind ranking for you right off the bat. If you're
All
ready,
right.
are you familiar with blind rankings?
No,
No.
refresh my memory on it.
So I've got a prompt here, and then five things that you have to rank according to the prompt, except they're called blind rankings because I list you one thing at a time, and you have to rate it 1 through 5 as you get them.
Right. So I
Um,
don't even know if that would have been my choice once I hear the other choices.
yeah.
Okay.
So your first blind rank is you're gonna blind rank Xbox Game Studios from 1 being best to 5 being not best. Xbox Game Studios games, not Game Studios. But your first one is Grounded.
Okay. Um, 3.
3, okay. Then Psychonauts 2.
Oh, see, I'm glad I was giving myself some room above.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say 2 on that one.
okay. The Master Chief Collection.
Um, oh man, my former coworkers are gonna hate me on this one.
Oh, really?
4.
Or do you have some former coworkers that are big Halo fans?
Well, I mean, sure, there's a lot of them that are Halo fans, but I worked at the studios that
Yeah.
have worked on Halo, so
Um, you did work at Bungie, so I mean, maybe you, yeah. So, Sea of Thieves.
um, I'll put that one in 5.
5.
But I love the franchise. It's
Okay.
top 5 is not a bad list to be at the bottom of.
No, it's not. So your last game, which will be number 1, is Forza Horizon 5.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Okay.
let's put that up there.
All right.
So many good things about that game. From just the way that it's evolved into this really engaging kind of live service game, all the different customization options, all the constant updates and amazing kind of DLC content that they're always adding to it. And then every time they bring out a new version of it, they are really innovating. They're pushing the boundaries of the graphics, the realistic aspect of it. If anyone's ever tried playing that game with like an actual setup where you sit in a racing setup, you just get the adrenaline like you're on a real racetrack. So
Yeah.
not feeling bad about that ranking, even though I didn't know about it upfront.
Uh, a friend and I played a lot of Forza Horizon like 3 when we were in middle school, but I've always wanted to try 5, so I should go check it out at some point. But all
Yeah.
right. So moving forward, your first actual question about you. So you received an Associates of Science degree in digital media from Full Sail in 2001. At the time of your graduation, did you plan on working in the video game industry?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, when I went into Full Sail, I was really drawn towards that specific school because of the hands-on kind of model that they were following, where you're not just learning the academia aspects of creative work and things like that, but you're also just getting to work kind of with the actual equipment, sometimes very expensive equipment, and in a production environment that would be very similar to how it would end up being in real life. And a lot of the things that we got introduced to there was, there was audio engineering, which is kind of the origin story of the school. And then there was their movie and TV production department, as well as the kind of event and show production. So like folks that want to just like learn everything there is to know about setting up a huge show, like a live performance of any kind, and then, packing it all up and shipping it away. And then they had this kind of newly formed program around digital media, which is like, anyone that's like working in this industry today would just be like, what is digital media? What even is that? But at the time, it was intended to be this like even more cool term than multimedia, which had already been around for a little bit. Neither of those terms are actually used anymore. But that was kind of the all-encompassing term that they were using for all these like new technology, new media type of working, whether it was like, working in web or working in some kind of digital marketing or any of these like things that were just kind of starting up at the time. But it was a weird time too, because around the time that I was had been in school for a little bit, there was this .com crash. So the market had really like believed strongly in everything that was like the internet and web and apps, and then all of a sudden, just like instantly overnight, there was this like big crash that they refer to as the .com crash, which was basically just, if your business is based off of just being a .com, it is now worth a lot less than it was before. And of course, as with anything, when something crashes, it goes way below what it should be. So for a little bit of time, kind of around the time that I was studying all this stuff, it was a little bit of a tough market. But I was a huge gamer at the time, and I had always been really into a lot of different things. So what I did initially to kind of utilize some of the stuff that I'd learned at that school was to work in post-production and film and TV production, just because that was some of the stuff that I also learned through this generic digital media course. But we also got to learn about game development, but it wasn't as extensive as it later would be at that school, where they would eventually introduce a completely separate game design track. But that didn't exist when I started there. So if they would have offered that track, I would have potentially chosen that at the time. But at the time, I was kind of open to a lot of different things. I just wanted to do something creative. I'd been into working with computers, working with design and creative things all my life. But I was also, alongside that, a gamer as well. So even though I initially started my career for a few years, kind of treading more into that kind of working in creating experiences, whether it was doing it through movie production, TV production, or through application design or website design, I was always utilizing a lot of the things that are foundational knowledge in the work that I eventually then started to do within the gaming industry. So it was a good kind of prepper. It almost feels like fate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes sense. But this is also good because this kind of transitions into my next question, which is, before you worked in games, you held a diverse range of multimedia roles, from graphic designer, visual effects and motion graphics artist, creative director, and more, kind of all in film and television production. How did these experiences prepare you for your eventual transition into the game industry?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of it was really well suited for some of the experiences that I would eventually need to acquire, or would just kind of like hone in on and evolve more once I joined games. With the kinds of roles that I started doing within games was, building interfaces and thinking through the kind of the user experience of experiencing different things that you can do in a game. And a lot of that was based off of the foundation I had in creating interactive multimedia experiences, as they were often referred to as, like these things that you would build to be experienced through, for example, kiosks that are in museums, where you're trying to create some kind of an exciting interactive journey that people go through digitally, or just creating a very a straightforward experience of a website, but it needed to be navigated through. So a lot of those things were kind of foundational things that I could really leverage in gaming. But then having also worked in trying to really envision how it will feel to someone to experience something, like we did a lot of when we were thinking about event production, really helped as well, when thinking about putting yourself into the shoes of the player, or the character that the player is trying to immerse themselves into role playing. What are they wanting in this moment? What are all the things that we have to ensure that they are able to access or understand, and all these different things. So thinking through those type of scenarios were very common in the things that I had done in other roles before, and so they felt like a good segue into gaming once I decided to kind of jump over to that genre of work, which I've then stayed in ever since.
Would you say, I mean, like if it were opposite, right? If you started in games, do you think the transition would be easy from games to film and TV?
Well, certainly today. I mean,
Yeah.
today there's so much stuff that is like a very similar workflow. Now I recently got a chance to visit Full Sail, the school that I graduated from many, many years ago, and they have, they have evolved quite a bit. It was like, I think like 2 or 3 different buildings when I was there, and now it's like 7 more buildings or something, and they're like massive, each of them. So it's such a difference. The campus has changed so much that when people were trying to like point me to certain things, I was like, wait, like, was that building this thing? Like, I don't even recognize it anymore. And it was this tiny thing next to the huge new one. So a lot of things have changed there, and the programs have changed a lot as well. So now you can take a course in this like massive kind of understanding of how to just set up a full pipeline of understanding how to bring a full environment into um, Unreal, and just have that all be projected behind you when you're doing a scene, when you're doing movie or TV production, and you have this whole thing that's just already loaded up. So there's none of that kind of green screen stuff that people used to do before, where the actors kind of just like in this weird kind of green room, and then everything comes together afterwards. You can just have this scene, and it's not a pre-rendered scene. You can just load up the model of the scene, and then when you're shooting the whole thing, you can just on the fly decide, okay, let's do it from this angle. So you just like turn the whole scene around, or you're just like, hey, let's move it over to this, like, we're trying to do a shot that's like outside of this cave. Now let's see how it looks if we're just a little bit inside of the cave. Like, these are all things you can just be trying out and exploring on the fly. And a lot of those things are technology that started off within a game engine. Unreal is a game engine, and now it's being used for movie production. So I feel like if you're in gaming and you're going to move over to movie production, you might even have an advantage. You might have knowledge that will be like the new way of doing things versus the way it's been traditionally done for many, many years.
Awesome. Moving forward, so your first role in the game industry, or at least your first role that was listed on your LinkedIn page, was with CCP as a senior game designer on Eve Online. Um, you know, how is this different from roles in film and television?
Yeah, I mean, it was different in the sense that moving through a kind of a production of a TV show or a movie is like super fast paced. It's like the shooting, which my team wasn't always part of, is like days, and then it's like weeks that you might have to work on a thing in post production. So it's just super fast paced, and everyone needs to be very kind of on top of things. And then that fast pace, is ongoing all the way to getting it out the door. Often you have like really hard deadlines. It's like this thing is, we've made agreements that it's going to be released on this day, and there's no way to like push that. So you just have to figure out ways to, get there. And then as soon as that project's out the door, even though that project is now just like we can relax, there might be another project, that you have to move on to right away. And now you're back to that kind of full pace. So interestingly enough, even though that isn't always the perception people have of game development, it actually felt like you could breathe a little bit more when I joined CGP. It was a game that had been around for a long time. It had already kind of proven its value, so there wasn't this kind of big uncertainty around like, hey, we're trying to build something and we don't know if it's going to work or not. The game had already kind of established itself. So the main thing we were trying to push for is how do we now kind of bring it to this next level of quality? And one of the main reasons they hired me and wanted to kind of further invest in the department that I was part of was because the game and its mechanics and kind of the world that it introduced to players was seen as something really exciting and unique and cool, and it had a lot of these like amazing things about it, like being like an MMO on a massive scale, and people could kind of just do whatever they wanted. It was this true sandbox experience. They could just make it whatever they felt it should be. But it was kind of known for having bad interface. Like it was like referred to as being Excel in space. It's a game about flying around in spaceships, but the interface itself felt like you were navigating through columns of Excel. Dark mode Excel, but still Excel. So that was the big challenge. Was like, how do we make it feel more like you're in this exciting game instead of just being in some kind of a spreadsheet application. So I kind of went in there with this kind of foundational knowledge and thinking about things through the lens of movie making and creating entertainment for people.
Mhm. Um, so when you started on the game EVE Online in 2010, it was already 7 years old. In what ways did working on an MMO kind of help your experience? And you already spoke a little bit about it, but it's in my question. And in what ways was it challenging?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was just an interesting challenge for me, which is probably the case for most people when they start working on games. I said earlier that it was nice to feel like I could breathe a little bit, even though many people would say that it's fast paced to build games, and often like people will talk about this like crunch culture and all this stuff to do to kind of like really be able to get the thing that you're trying to work on out the door at quality. It still felt to me like less of a crunch and less of a kind of high stakes situation every single day as it was in the movie business. So it almost feels like that helped kind of prep me for that. Was just like, hey, it's not as crazy. But joining a project that has that much history already meant that there was so much knowledge that had been built up. And when you were, because this was a development team that was very kind of engaged with the player community. Like we would meet the players face to face and talk to them about things and try to kind of work with them to figure out, what is it that you guys are needing here. And sometimes you would have to like kind of hear their thoughts and perspectives, but then figure out a way to translate that into something that could actually work in practice, because you had to listen to many voices. You couldn't just go by what one of them said and build that exactly the way that they think it should be. And the challenge was that they would sometimes know so much more about the game and the lore of the game and just all the different kind of things that you could do in the game. And it felt like it was, because it's such a complex game, even after working there for many years and having had many of those conversations with players constantly, I still felt like there was so much I hadn't yet kind of touched the surface of in terms of the deep knowledge of the game and its universe. So that was really interesting, just having that kind of a difference. And so it humbled you a lot, where you just kind of accepted the fact that the players are always going to know a lot more about the game itself. So we have to utilize that and use their kind of knowledge to help us, because we might have a way to understand how to kind of solve a design problem, but they'll always know what it is to experience the game as a player much better than us.
Would you say that the players and that community that played the game at the time were one of the more important aspects of the game's development?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that sets the game apart from many other communities, because CCP really leaned into that. distinction and uniqueness. So they would have the players would elect a council of 12 members who would be elected by the players themselves and would then represent the players and meet with the developers like a couple of times a year at the headquarters to discuss different topics of things that they felt were needed to be discussed. So they would sometimes bring specific topics that they were advocating for from the groups that they were representing. The people that put them in power would sometimes, they would do it because they were like, you have a lot of knowledge and you'll be able to represent us, and so we just want you to kind of be there. And other times they'd be like, we put you in power specifically to advocate for this perspective, and so we want you to lobby almost that one thing. And so it was really interesting to engage with this group because they sometimes took those roles very seriously, even though at the end of the day, it's just a gaming community in a game. But a lot of these people just saw these roles as like actual jobs, and they took them seriously. And so that, I think, is very much one of the kind of the characteristics of the game, is just how over time it evolved into really leaning on that strong relationship with the community in the way that the game kept evolving and kept being very kind of close to listening to the needs of the players and understanding kind of what are the players telling us it needs to focus on. There would, of course, sometimes be things that the company wanted to do to kind of chase certain kind of large visions that they were excited about, but they would also pitch those things to this group to see kind of like, which parts of this will players potentially like, and which parts do we need to rethink because they might be really against certain aspects of it. And so you're kind of having this committee be also the canary in the coal mine to help you identify which things do we need to be extra careful about or rethink potentially.
Hey everybody, unfortunately my camera died, so Orvar is just gonna have to stare at this orange screen. I apologize, Orvar. Like I mentioned, I'm trying some new things, and that comes with some lessons to be learned. So, but going forward, you continued to work at CCP, where you moved up to game design director and then eventually director of user experience for EVE Online, with your name credited on 25 updates for EVE Online. How was it working on a game that was constantly changing, evolving, and expanding?
Yeah, it was definitely very exciting. I'll say, like, some of those releases were more major releases than others. So 25 seems like a very big number, but I'll say like maybe a handful of those were like some really big investments that we were very excited about. For example, we wanted to completely reimagine the character creation process in the game, allow players to use a character creator that offered a lot of ways to express themselves and create a character that could look and feel the way that they kind of wanted to be able to express themselves within this game. And all those characters were three-dimensional rather than just being kind of these generated images. That was a really big evolutionary step. There were a lot of cool kind of ideas that we explored. Some worked out and some didn't. Some are still around in the game today, and some kind of have been moved away from. There was I worked on the team that introduced a massive kind of investment in the industry kind of portion of the game, where you are able to really make it more exciting to be an industrialist in this game, where you're like creating assets out of minerals and things like that, and then being able to create structures and stations that were owned by players and customized by players was something that we introduced into the game as well, which used to be just something that kind of existed as part of the already established world. Now that was stuff that had kind of been shifted over to players governing and deciding on. And with things that players were able to create, players were also able to destroy. So that created a whole new variety of ways that players could um, hurt each other, so to speak, by destroying each other's player-owned structures. So there was a lot of stuff there that we were really excited about and proud of, and was a lot of fun to work on. But it was the role also that I was in was more structured around helping out with the kind of the organizational aspects of the design department, how to kind of lean into helping some of the the designers that were working there kind of on the different processes that they were utilizing to be able to kind of find the type of experiences that were worth investing in. So there was more of that split between the role that I was in during those days and the folks that were kind of leading the actual game itself. We established this role, director of user experience, which was a fairly new role within the gaming industry at the time. There were not a lot of folks that were kind of directing user experience within games yet. It had always been kind of seen as part of just one of the things that other design or creative leaders that were leading games were just kind of doing as an all-up direction. They didn't used to have that kind of separated into those individual roles. But EVE Online was certainly a game that where that seemed to make sense because there was just so much things that were being worked on that were very UX focused and reliant on ensuring that the UX aspects of it were successful. So it was a role that made sense to us at the time, and it made sense for me to be in that role because it was kind of the craft within the design discipline that I had been focused on the most and had the most kind of capabilities within.
At the beginning, you mentioned that some of those updates that you put out were more successful than others, and some didn't land too well. Would you say the updates that didn't land too well taught you about what the community wanted, and while they may not have been, I guess, super received well by the community, but did it steer you in the right direction, if that makes sense?
I mean, I will say that some of the things that didn't land well with the community, we ended up listening to that feedback from the community to really kind of turn it around. There was a specific project that we worked on, which was to completely kind of reimagine the inventory management system of the game. And inventory management in games in general are often considered fairly important. The one in Minecraft is certainly important, but in Eve,
Yeah.
it's like a soup, like it's like the heart of the game because you are needing to move items between the ship. You're taking your ship's cargo and filling it up with some things that you need to get from one place to another. You're taking a lot of risk to move things around because people could infiltrate you on your way there, and then when you get to that place you need to make sure that you can move that into the appropriate place, and those are all managed through folders. And so the inventory management system was very important. Now, we had a lot of ambitions about the redesign in terms of making it do more for players. We wanted to improve the size of the inventory overall. We wanted to improve the performance so that it would load faster even if you had thousands of items. And when you did have thousands of items, we wanted it to be easy for you to be able to kind of filter and sort things, and then even save some of those filters and sort options and put things into different kind of folders and buckets to be more organized. But along the lines of all those things that we wanted to improve, we also weren't necessarily aware of the different ways people were doing the same thing. So it's kind of like Photoshop. If you ask someone to do a certain thing in Photoshop, especially if it takes a few steps or is like a little complex to do, 10 different people will actually do it in 10 drastically different ways because there are literally so many ways you can do the same thing. And who's to say which one of those things is right and which is wrong? There might be some of them that are more efficient or better, or maybe they were the things that were actually intended to do those type of things originally when imagined. But then if someone is able to get a good result using some other method, then who's to say that that isn't also something that should remain supported? So I often think about kind of tools like that, like Photoshop, when I think about this effort that we were part of, where it's like, man, like it's so hard to change something because you don't necessarily know what that might do to a workflow because you don't necessarily realize all the different ways people are doing something. So we thought we understood how people do certain tasks, especially stuff that they were kind of used to doing very quickly. They're moving their ship and they click on some shortcut which opens up a thing, and then they just kind of position their mouse, before it even opens up a window to confirm something to be as efficient as possible. And so it's, even if you just move that confirmation button, or you don't even have it in that window anymore, now it's like part of some other flow. It disrupts people's mental models. It disrupts their kind of ability to just kind of, without even thinking about it, do certain actions. And so there was a ton of stuff like that that happened with this release or this update. And so there was a lot of strongly worded forum posts that were sent our ways about this endeavor that kind of required us to really, take time to kind of listen to all those different perspectives and fully understand all the different scenarios and use cases that we might have missed, and kind of go through the effort of reconciling those things so that the new design could remain with some of the benefits that it was introducing, but also not affect too drastically the workflows people are used to. Now, there's always going to be something that people need to adopt to as part of a change when you make a change to something and you redesign it. But we wanted it more to feel like just a need to adopt to something new, rather than it feeling like we had actually regressed the capabilities. Like, hey, this thing that I used to do, you removed it, and it's not, I can't do it in any other way now. So that's not just adopting, that's accepting the fact that you have your needs have kind of like been eliminated in certain ways.
Mhm.
And so that was the thing that we worked towards listening to and improving. And so again, that's where we benefited from that engagement with players. It can be tough to have that clear kind of engagement with players, because when they're not happy with you, you hear them so aggressively
I
or
bet.
loudly.
Yeah.
But the positives in that is that you're getting those feelings from the source, and once they calm down, they're able to kind of articulate, this is the problem, and that was where we leaned in and made the improvements that we needed to make.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. And my next question is, in September of 2015, you started work as the UX director of Bungie. Uh, in what ways had your work on EVE Online kind of help you secure that position with Bungie?
Yeah, I would say the main thing that helped me there was just the fact that I had been in this role, because when I got connected with the team at Bungie, they kind of told me that they had been looking for, they felt like they needed someone in the role of a UX director at the company to kind of help them lead the next evolution of Destiny. It wasn't the same kind of reason that it was at CCP. At CCP, it was very much this like, we know that our players are telling us that our UI sucks, and we agree with them, so we need to hire some people to help correct
Yeah.
that. Whereas with Destiny, it was like a game that was kind of known for being a game that really cared about, making sure that the game experience was like top-notch UX. The game feel of the gameplay had just like a lot of love and care, and the interface of the game was very unique and had a lot of aspects that felt very crafted and polished. So the need there was more to help kind of establish good ways of working together with other disciplines within the broader Destiny team. How do we make sure that the team of these amazing, talented, creative people that are kind of focused on the UI and UX aspects of the game experiences we're shipping, how do we make sure that they are set up for success when they're collaborating with all these different teams of game designers and narrative designers and level designers and designers that are designing all the different um, elements and items in the game, like the weapons and armor and all that stuff. There's a lot of people that needed to work effectively together, and how do we bring someone in to help really kind of shape that and establish a good working process for that. So in their efforts to try to find someone that could do that with them, they were looking for someone that had been in a role like that before, which wasn't a lot of people at the time. Like I had said before, the role of a UX director in games was very new as a role at
Mhm.
that time. So even though I was working, elsewhere, I was based in Iceland. I would have had to move my whole family to the US, and they would have had to figure out a way to kind of like get me the proper kind of work authorization and all that stuff. They were still willing to do all that and take that chance on me because of the fact that they had been looking for someone in this role for a while. And so I think that helped quite a bit, was just having been in that role before. And then also, of course, a lot of the things that I had worked on within CCP, especially with just the way that we had worked very closely with other disciplines, and the folks that were focused on UI UX, we were part of the same group of designers as all of the other design roles. So there wasn't really this kind of split between the different subdisciplines within creative and design. We were just all kind of working together. We had these like daily stand-ups and discuss things from all different aspects. It wasn't just talking about the UI UX aspects of things. It was also just talking about system designs and all other things. And so having been part of that type of culture was also something that was useful, because they wanted to try to figure out a way to bring those different teams better together.
Very great answer, very in-depth answer. In fact, you answered the next question that I had. Essentially, I was going to pretty much ask you, like, how it was different working between the two companies, but I mean, you kind of got that early on in your last answer. So we're just going to skip ahead, and we're going to break it up a little bit and do another blind rank.
Oh,
If you're
right.
ready. So this
Yeah.
blind rank, you're going to blind rank exotic weapons in Destiny from best to worst. Obviously, 1 being the best and 5 being the worst. All right. So the first weapon is the Galahorn.
Oh, this is such a tricky thing, because it's so subjective,
Yeah.
like am I ranking it based on the kind of the notoriety of how hard it is to acquire something? Am I ranking it based on how many different activities it can be useful in? Because there's certain raids and certain situations where something like a Galahorn is like super valuable.
Yeah.
And then there's other, like the Dreaming City raid, like yes, I would need that. But then there's others where it's like, no, that's not really what I would want my heavy slot to be occupied by. So it's so hard. But I would say, the Galahorn, I would, is it like from 1 to 5?
1 to 5. One being best, 5 being worst.
Yeah, let's put that at 4.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Number 4 goes to Galahorn. The Thorn.
Mm, um, let's make that 3.
3. Sunshot.
Oh, well, it kind of depends on whether it's when it was broken or after it'd been nerfed and balanced. Uh, Man, if I only knew what's coming. Let's make that a 5.
A 5. All right. Dragon's Breath.
Oh, interesting. Is that the little mini, like
That's the rocket launcher that's got like the kind of like shark paint on it,
yeah,
I
yeah,
believe.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
could I hope that's the right one.
Oh man, I shouldn't have spent the 5th slot. I'm never efficient with those, because you have to be so good at like kind of um calculating kind of the trajectory. I mean, I guess I'll have to put it in. I'd
2.
already used 3, right?
You got 2 and 1.
Yeah, I'll put it in 2.
All right. Just like last time, your last one is going to be number 1. So number 1 goes to the Vex Mytho class.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll have to take it. Yeah, I was kind of like I was like, oh, if there's gonna be this like really amazing sniper, I want to make sure that I have got the room for it.
No,
Um,
unfortunately not.
okay. Well, yeah, sure. I'm sure I could make, if that was my loadout that I had to choose and I can only go with that, then I'm sure I could make it work.
I I personally made the list based off of exotics that I had obtained at some point. In fact, I got the Gallimore. I never even earned it in a raid or anything. I bought it from Zur because I remember at the end of Destiny 1 he sold it, and then the Vex Mytho class, when you did the raids, you could save the individual checkpoints. And I was invited to do the Vault of Glass at the very end. Like they'd gotten all the checkpoints except for the boss. Well, they had the boss checkpoint. They just hadn't beaten him yet. And I did it with this group of guys, and I beat the boss, and I got the Vex Mytho class. And nobody else got an exotic. And this one guy yelled at me. He was like, "It's bullcrap that I did the whole thing, and I didn't get any, exotics or anything, and you got the Vex Mytho class." So that's how I got that. All right, but moving forward
Yeah.
from
I really loved collecting hand cannons just because of like
yeah,
there's something about them, and then sniper rifles. Those were
snipers are cool.
those two were my go-to.
I liked the Thorn a lot as well. I had that. Um, but
Yeah.
moving forward, your next question here is in 2019 you started as the principal director of design at Xbox, um, where you worked on the Xbox brand and hardware, rather than a particular game or title. What were the biggest changes from the previous two roles that you had at CCP and Bungie when you worked in this position?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Like one of the things that kind of motivated me to join the Xbox team was just that at the time at Bungie, the way that we were kind of doing design work was very, it was kind of following in the footsteps of a lot of workflows that we'd been following for many, many years. People would just work on things in Photoshop and Illustrator and send each other files back and forth, and then create assets and submit them. And when I was chatting with the Xbox team, I heard about all these amazing things. And around the same time that I was just talking to them, we had actually lost the whole research department at Bungie.
Oh wow.
And when I was interviewing with Xbox Design, their department was actually called Xbox Design and Research, or Xbox Research and Design. I can't remember which one came first, but they're equally important. And there was just like these two big orgs. Like I used to be, even though it was a fairly big team that I was part of within Bungie of designers, it felt like even more people, and they were all the same kind of designers as me. Whereas when I was at Bungie, it was like, yes, there were a handful of people that kind of focused on the same type of skill sets as me, but others were just, they were a different type of design within kind of the game design discipline. Whereas at Xbox, they were all people that were kind of thinking about design from the same principles that I was. And so I felt like I could learn a lot from a lot of people. And then the other half of the whole org was researchers. These were super smart people, many of them with like PhDs in research. And so I felt like I would get a chance to learn a lot from them as well. And then they talked to me about all this like ways that they had evolved the way that they're working. This was at a time when we were actually initially using Sketch, but at this time, kind of soon after I started, we were all moving over to Figma. That was becoming the tool that was kind of the industry standard of how you would work on the type of design that we were doing. And then they were leaning into like really hard into kind of adopting design systems. So instead of you kind of thinking through designing all the different components and pieces of the interface, you would just establish them as these pre-designed components that had been validated and vetted through a process of building it as a component where everything that had been built into it already accounted for all the ways it needed to be supported as. So like, if you need this button to work with all the different inputs and all the different ways that you need to be able to use it on, all the different devices that we want to support, and you want it to be able to pick up any type of visual representation, whether it's, in light mode or dark mode or high contrast or what have you. Those are all things that are built into these things, and it just works out of the box. These are all things that we would be manually designing, like hand designing on a case-by-case basis for every individual project before. So I was just blown away by how much they had advanced and kind of become more efficient at a lot of the things that maybe are more mundane. And it just allowed you to focus more on just being creative and making a lot of progress on thinking about what's the best experience for players and how do we introduce more cool features to them, because now we can get out of kind of thinking about all this stuff that takes a lot of time but doesn't really have a lot of value to the players themselves. So I jumped on that ship because I was excited about the way it would really elevate my knowledge of how to do UI UX. And so I was kind of ready for that change, even though it meant moving away from working directly on a game product, which is always super exciting. I felt like I wasn't going too far away from it because I was going to be joining Xbox platform team, helping them design the new experience of the latest generation of Xbox consoles.
Awesome. And this is, my next question, but it's also sort of a follow-up to that. But how important when, you're designing all of those things and you're working on projects like that, how important was it to consider the overall experience of somebody playing on an Xbox console?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was definitely very important to do. And that's how we were thinking through a lot of things that we were trying to um, evolve and kind of make better. Part of the initiative of bringing the new generation of consoles to gamers wasn't just to innovate the hardware. We wanted to innovate all of the things that went into the platform itself as well. So whether it was the unboxing experience of just, I'm getting my console in my home and I'm wanting to, set it up for the first time, and I'm going through all the steps that I need to go through to do that. How is that going to feel? Is it going to make sense step by step? If we're wanting it to feel like it's not too many steps, and you're able to get to playing games and having fun on this device as soon as possible, what are we willing to kind of cut down in terms of the different steps you have to go through? And is it okay to favor that speed over kind of like some of the clarity that you might be able to learn from some of those additional steps? So we had to find that kind of perfect balance. And then thinking through, what is the ideal experience players want when every time they launch this machine, when they land on the home experience, how do we ensure that they feel like this is kind of the next evolution in this console experience? How do we make them see that we've really utilized some of the new capabilities of the hardware in terms of the speed and snappiness, and then just the delightfulness of being in that environment. So we invested in things like the dynamic backgrounds. So it wasn't just static backgrounds anymore; they were dynamic, and oftentimes they would be supported for the kinds of um, franchises and things you might be interested in within the console experience. So we thought through a lot of different things that we were, wanting to make sure would really land with the players. So we had the players in mind quite a bit. And a lot of the things that helped with that was the fact that we had a whole research team that conducted a lot of these like studies where they sat down with real people and would basically just monitor them doing this step-by-step thing. And then we would just all kind of look at it and observe and be like, oh man, oh, they don't know how to, oh, they skipped that step and didn't actually read it. So now they're going to be lost in the next step. Oh no. And
Yeah.
so looking through many studies like that and just kind of like figuring out, okay, there's something happened here. They didn't clearly get this thing that we thought they would get. How do we improve that? How do we make it so that they don't miss it? And then go back to the flow and try to improve it. So a lot of that, doing that back and forth, iterating on it, was definitely part of making that overall good experience. And it was definitely all done through the effort of wanting to make sure that it would work well in the hands of players.
I was actually also going to ask, and you touched on this a little bit towards the end of your last question. You know, in doing that role, how important is research?
Oh yeah, I mean, research is really important for kind of a lot of different phases of a project. You definitely want to rely on research at the very beginning of something. So if someone brings an idea to you, or they're like, "Hey, we should think about ways to improve this, or ways to evolve this, or ways to come up with new things in this area of the game," or whatever the thing might be, you're always wanting to kind of understand, is this just something that we're solely wanting to go do because of our own kind of, you know, internal initial kind of excitement about it, or are we also basing it off of some of the insights that we have learned about our players? And that's just because it's always important to not be too invested in kind of our own perspectives and opinions, like you know, which is hard sometimes for people, because maybe the reason they're working on a game is because they consider themselves big fans of that game, and they consider themselves part of the kind of the audience that is engaged with that game. But even if they would consider them, as part of the kind of the community of the game, they still have to realize that they're never going to be the same, because they have all these additional biases and insights and understanding that kind of reveal how the sausage gets made, that makes their perspective maybe skewed from what is the truly right thing to do for the broader kind of player uh, community. So I always really advocate for having some insights at the very beginning of something, so that we're informed by that, alongside some of the things that we might have as like our own aspirations from kind of within the team itself. Because of course people do also want to be, they want to feel like they can be creative. They want to feel like they're not just making decisions solely on whatever the numbers are telling us. So you have to find kind of a good balance there. So that's where research is really important. And then research is important when you start to explore different solutions. Like, hey, we want to try this, we want to try that, but we need to research it. And sometimes that means research it through the eyes of the actual players themselves, and sometimes it means we're going to do our own kind of play testing of something. We're trying to see if this is actually fun to go through, or if this is clear, if we can do this intuitively without getting confused. And that's a form of research as well, but you have to kind of do both. You can't just take your own perspective, or just try it out internally and then just be like, oh, we all got it, so players must get it too. You have to kind of validate it with players as well. So I think during all the different stages of development, you're wanting to rely on research, whether it's, gathering new research that is very bespoke to the needs you need to kind of seek, or maybe you can look at past research. Oftentimes, a lot of research, especially within the organizations that I've been part of within Microsoft, there's so much research that already exists. Our research departments have sometimes done so much groundwork beforehand. So you don't always have to go and spend time seeking those answers again. You can just look at the past studies where very similar questions were being asked that you might need to be asking again now. And looking at those insights can sometimes be super insightful and eye-opening, and really set you on a course for trying something out that maybe if you wouldn't have known those insights, you would have done some different in a different way, and then maybe you would have not landed as well with the players once you ship it.
Makes sense. Yeah, I can understand. I mean, not just in games, but in any field, really, research can do wonders. But moving on from your experience at Xbox, we're about to go into your experience with Mojang. But before we do that, to audiences, I actually met Orvar. I think we touched on this at the very beginning at a convention in San Francisco, the Game Dev- Game Developers Conference, or GDC. And for
Yep.
those who don't know, GDC is held every year. Uh, it's been in San Francisco for the last number of years, but um, that's where game developers from all over the world go, and they give talks, they network with each other. And I took a whim to go there. I actually took out a personal loan, and it's just, I think, so cool that I bumped into you there. Orvar and I didn't plan on meeting. We didn't know each other. We weren't connected on LinkedIn or anything before we went. I was taking a picture with a group in front of a kind of sign, and Orvar was waiting, and I, offered to take the picture for you, and then that's how we got to speaking. So I just wanted to mention that because I think it goes to show that, and this may be unrelated to the overall video, that taking a chance can be a very good thing. Because I took a chance on going to GDC, and I was able to connect with Orvar, who has got plenty of experience. That's why I'm interviewing you. Um, but yeah, I mean, so I mean, when we met too, you were wearing a Mojang backpack, and I think we talked for a bit. And I was like, "You work
That
at
helped.
Mojang?" And so that's why I got so excited about this interview because not just for myself, but so many people in my life, Minecraft is so big. You know, not just for gamers, but people I know that don't even play video games have played Minecraft at some point. It's such a cultural and global phenomenon, I feel like. So being able to talk to somebody who's actively working on the game is such a cool opportunity for me. But in June 2024, you started as the director of product design at Mojang. How's it been working on a world-renowned game such as Minecraft?
Yeah, I mean, it was really kind of interesting. I'd been with Xbox Design for a few years, and we were doing really exciting stuff. It was like, just like I had said before, the reason kind of wanting to join them initially because of their kind of like this cutting edge advancement in creating experiences and coming up with ways to really lean into system design to be able to really scale that across like different endpoints. These are all things that they're actively still working on, and it's a very exciting work. But something was also kind of pulling me back into game development and wanting to be part of a really exciting game community. And it's so funny. I often tell people this story about how throughout my whole career, I have three daughters. They've kind of grown up gradually throughout my career in games. But when I was working at CCP, it was this like really kind of weird, quirky, sci-fi MMO game. They didn't really understand it at the time. They were just more wanting to play with dolls or maybe do dress up and play house in Sims. So they were kind of just like, yeah, that's we don't know, like we don't know about that game. And then I was working at Bungie, and while that was very impressive, and they definitely loved going to the kind of the company parties and all that stuff. They were like, yeah, Destiny, yeah, there's this boy in my class, he plays it, but it's kind of a weird game. Like I don't like it. So I was like, oh man, I haven't quite gotten where I can impress my daughters yet. And then I was working on Xbox, and they were all like, "Yeah, but Dad, we play on PlayStation and Switch." So, and but now I work at Mojang freaking Studios, and they're like, "Dad, that is cool." Like they are like all playing Minecraft. They're all fans of the game, and they have been for years. So it's just like I finally found my place. So if for nothing else, I've finally found something where it can, um, you know, establish me as a cool dad. Uh, but overall, I would just say that it's such a dream product to kind of join, and it really feels like a lot of things have kind of led to it. Because when I was working on EVE Online, it was this amazing kind of sandbox universe where people had the creativity to kind of do whatever they wanted, and that's always kind of been the way that people think about Minecraft. And also within when working on Destiny, there was this really strong community, like very passionate players that really cared about the game and kind of where it was headed. And there's a really strong community behind Minecraft. So just a lot of the things that I've kind of accumulated on the way towards working on Minecraft have really felt like natural steps towards it. And so I'm really excited where I'm at right now. And I think a lot of the things we're doing there since I've joined in the past year have been some of the most exciting things for many years to be happening. The movie came out, and
Yeah.
that brought this like whole new wave of excitement from both new fans, but also people that have loved the franchise for many, many years before. So it's just on this really nice kind of trajectory right now, which is really exciting.
Yeah. Well, actually, and I didn't even have any question about this, but I mean, did you guys like celebrate the movie release when that
Oh
happened?
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah,
We had a showing. We had this like green carpet instead of red carpet
that's
because
fun.
it makes sense
Yeah.
in Minecraft universe. And that was a lot of fun with like a photo booth and nice, just kind of like nice day, and all sit together in a movie theater and watch the movie with your peers, with people that work on this game. And so that was really cool, and really exciting. And it kind of brought me back to some of the things that I've experienced when coming out with these like big monumental releases at game studios. Like I still remember the release party for Destiny 2. It was this amazing celebration. The release parties for some of these like bigger expansions for EVE Online, especially when also you would have these like fan gatherings called Fan Fest for EVE Online, where a bunch of people, thousands of players, would actually fly to Iceland to come together and celebrate for a number of days, just going all out to celebrate this amazing game that they all play together and love. So a lot of those things definitely kind of felt similar in terms of just the sense of joy and accomplishment that everyone within the studio was feeling around the release of the movie. So it was definitely a really cool moment to be able to experience, even though my direct impact was shorter than most of the people that I work with there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still an impact nonetheless. But we you touched on it in my question before asking about the film, but creativity is a big part of Minecraft. And storytelling has become a big part of Minecraft too. There was the that update for realms, that the story update, where if something happened, it would kind of be logged. And we talked about that actually when we met. Um, how have stories from players inspired you and your team?
Yeah, I mean that's amazing, an amazing question. People actually on my team, like that are part of my design team, were part of bringing that to life. Introduce that story aspect into the realms experience, and so there's a lot of just excitement for when we are able to kind of see players want to engage more with those type of things. Now, the thing that we're really also noticing is that there's this storytelling aspect of different types of ways of enjoying Minecraft and playing Minecraft. All these different DLCs, all these different kind of add-ons that are being released on a regular basis. They create so much variety and interesting new ways of expressing yourself and enjoying the game. When you're able to not just pretend that you're this character from this movie that you love, or this franchise that you love to engage with, but you can actually just get the add-on that unlocks that, and now you can just be SpongeBob, or you can be Spider-Man, or you can be all these different characters within the world of Minecraft, but with the added creativity of just building all kinds of different experiences around them. That's just so cool. And so there's this kind of infinite possibilities, as things evolve and as people are introduced to new adventures and franchises and experiences. And those are always going to have the potential of being brought into the world of Minecraft. That's when you see the kind of the potential for it to keep going and just keep being relevant for forever,
Mhm.
at least as long as people want to be creative and have that kind of sense of joy in their life.
Yeah. You mentioned like wearing skins, being Spider-Man or SpongeBob, but I got the Master Chief skin
Mm.
on 360 like forever ago, and that's the one that I've been wearing ever since. And I used to really love playing. I used to be really big into Mass Effect when I was younger, and there was a Mass Effect like texture pack on the Xbox I played with all the time. But the,
Yeah, I love Mass Effect. I've
yeah, I
played that so much.
I loved it so much when I got Xbox Live for the first time. I made my name the Bomb Effect instead of the Mass Effect. Um, 'Cause I wanted it to be something Mass Effect related. But
I loved it
we,
so much that I even gave Andromeda a good a good a good chance,
yeah,
a good effort.
a good effort. I don't know if I ever beat Andromeda,
No,
but
I didn't finish it,
well,
but I feel like I gave them a good chance.
here's hoping that the next one is pretty good whenever it comes out. But Going forward with the Minecraft updates, the Chase the Skies update was, released in mid-June. A big part of the update is allowing players to find and, raise gas that they can then fly. Uh, I'm just curious, what's the story behind that concept? How is that conceived, or it, like how did that get come up with? Because that's really cool, and I just wanted to know.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. So one of the interesting things about kind of the way that the different teams are split up is that, like, the team that I lead focuses a lot on the different kind of product experiences that exist out around the world of the game itself. So it's like when you're engaging with the Realm subscription, or when you're engaging with the marketplace, or any of these like different kind of products that exist within the ecosystem but not inside of the game itself. That's going to be my team. And then a lot of the things that are being led primarily from the Stockholm office, because we've got offices in both Redmond and Washington within the US, and then in Stockholm in Sweden. A lot of the things that are done there are going to be the specific game experiences. So a lot of the things that went into this release was under the direction, of course, of our game director, Agnes, who, is just very passionate about bringing these whimsical, enjoyable things to life within the game. So this is probably a thing that has been brewing as an idea for a while, and they were really excited to execute on it. It has this really funny side effect. Like when I'm playing with my coworkers in our own kind of personal realm, we have these flying around, but some of
Yeah.
our team members will always kind of like get a little bit of a PTSD when they see them flying around, because they've trained themselves to be like, oh my God, there's a ghast, like look away and like get away and like try to build yourself into a fortress so that they don't get you with their fireballs. And now, of course, these are not those type of ghast. These are the happy, friendly ones that you can tame and utilize and be friends with. But it's just that visual has kind of been ingrained into their brain as like, you see this and it means danger. So it always just like requires them to kind of evolve and stop seeing them as an enemy, as a threat, as something to be scared of.
Yeah. It's actually really interesting, when the update got like announced and shown. I saw a lot of people on social media, TikTok, Instagram, making videos like, "Oh, this is why they've always been crying, the ghasts. They meant to be in the overworld," and people started feeling bad for them and stuff. And then I think there's an update where like you find one, you tame it, you bring it to the overworld, and then you kill it, right? And you get an achievement for that. I don't know why I said update, but you get an achievement for that. And I saw people getting like, they're like, I can't ever do this. I can't give the gas what he
So
wants.
conflicting.
Yeah. But get your last, big question here. Um, you know, aside from all you do at, all you do at Mojang, all you did at Xbox, you also are a senior lecturer at DigiPen. You started in
Yes.
2020, while I think that you were at Xbox, and you've kept going. Um, how have your talents as a lecturer grown? I mean, when you started, you already had so much experience, but it's been 5 years since you started. How have your skills as a lecturer grown in those regards?
Yeah, I think they've definitely grown, because there's this kind of a specific approach and skill set to kind of learn and adapt to, which is about like teaching material.
Mhm.
And even when I started initially, having mentored people and kind of like helped um, people kind of learn certain skills that were related to the topic that I was teaching. I still feel like, in order for you to be able to effectively teach a class in something, you kind of have to like, you have to know that much more about the topic to be able to kind of articulate it well. There's one, it's one thing to kind of know how to do it on your own, but it's another thing of like knowing how to really articulate it in a way that can land with a broad audience of people that have very different ways of learning how to do stuff. Some people learn by doing, others by kind of like hearing you say it and then reinforcing it. on a regular basis, because maybe it doesn't stick if you just hear it mentioned once. You have to kind of hear it again and again, and then you have to hear it being referenced and shown, and maybe even shown a few times, and then you get to try it yourself and all these things. And so I had to really learn kind of the right pacing of that. How do you teach things in such a way that they actually stick? So when I first started teaching, I was really trying to make make the most use of those courses. I was like, hey, how do I pack as much knowledge into these courses as possible so that these students know all the different things that there is to know about this? And then I realized over time that it's more about the quality than the quantity. You'd rather that they learn 10 things and they remember those 10 things and they actually feel confident that they can utilize those 10 things than introducing them to 50 things and they kind of just like, they kind of just pour through and don't really stick. So that's probably how I've kind of evolved the material and the lectures and the way that I kind of have them do certain assignments is really just to kind of lean into that, like, stick with the most important pieces and kind of really like nurture that they learn those things, because if all they remember is those things and nothing else, they're still maybe going to be able to um, figure out 90% of the challenges that are thrown their way if they are working in this field.
All right, great. So only a few more questions, but these are relatively smaller ones compared to what I've asked you. But we've got a third and final blind rank here.
Nice.
So
Nice.
these you're gonna blind rank 5 Minecraft mobs from most annoying to least annoying. So this one's actually gonna be flipped, with 1 being most annoying and 5 being least annoying.
Okay.
So the creeper.
Oh, see, I have a little bit of a soft spot for the
Yeah.
Creeper. They're kind of cute. So I'll probably put that as like least annoying. So 5.
All right. I think that once you've dealt with enough creepers, you can kind of get away with them.
Yeah.
The Phantom.
Um, hmm. Let's put that at 3 because I
3.
don't know what's coming my way. I want to have some room.
Uh, Drowned.
Uh, hmm, 2,
2. All right. A Slime.
4.
4. All right. For the third time, your last choice is your number 1. So your number 1 is a ghast. The ghast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's so interesting. There's this conflicting feeling about a ghast now because of the happy ghast kind of variant. So, I mean, but still, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a strategy though to deal with them. So, like, there certainly are um, mobs that are even worse. So, like, if you had mentioned other ones, they probably would have been more annoying than ghast. But
Yeah.
feel pretty good about them at the top of this list with the options that were given.
For me, the Phantoms would definitely be number 1. Uh,
Yeah, if I would have known the list up front, I probably would have shifted those around a little bit. But I was like, yeah, I was wondering if there were going to be like Enderman or something else that I needed to have room for at the top.
Because the thing with Phantoms is that I can deal with everything else, but if I'm playing on a server where people aren't going to sleep, and the Phantoms keep spawning, there's really like nothing I can do about it. But uh, so this next question, I ask everybody that I interview. Oh, technically, these next 2 questions I ask everybody that I interview. People like to treat this next one like it's a trick question, but it's not. Um, what is your favorite game of all time?
Oh, so this is actually pretty easy for me because very recently there was a post by the creator of Deus Ex, the first Deus Ex game, and he was kind of celebrating the fact that it's the 25-year anniversary.
Mhm.
And so I played this game when it first came out in 2000, and I was studying at Full Sail, and I feel like playing this game, I felt like I was like really realizing how excited I was about gaming and creating experiences in games. And a lot of my student projects that I did at the school were inspired by stuff that I was experiencing in this game at the time. So I feel like some of the student projects that I really leaned into and got good grades for was because of how inspired I was by this game and the universe it was kind of building. And then I just wanted to work in games after I played this game. So I contribute working in games to that game. So I've enjoyed a lot of games throughout my career, but there's no game that I can just single out and say this is the reason I work in games. Like a lot of people will say that about them being in the movie business. Like they'll come and take an award and then point out to a director in the audience and say, well, your movie back in like 80 something,
Mhm.
made me want to make movies, and now I'm up here. And so I feel like that's kind of my origin story of joining the gaming industry. Is when I was studying the type of skills that I would need to join the industry to begin with, I was playing this game called Deus Ex, and it just kind of rocked my world to the point where I was like, I wanna get to a point in my career where I'm making games because of playing that game.
That's awesome to hear. I was actually at a game store, a local game store, a few weeks ago, and the first Deus Ex is, I'm pretty sure it's ported on the PlayStation 2, and it's called Deus Ex: The Conspiracy, or is that the? It's either the first one or the sequel. It's called like the.
Well, yeah, there's a few games, of course, that have been released since the first one. The first one, I mean, it definitely came out on PC and Mac. Um, did it come out uh, on consoles? Yeah, it came out on everything. It came out on PlayStation, Xbox, PC, Mac, and Linux even, which is,
Mhm.
that's so fitting for a game like Deus Ex. Of course,
Yeah.
they would also be supported on Linux, but it was on all of those different platforms. But then there's been a few sequels, and as someone that was just like such a fan of Deus Ex, the original game, I played all of them. Some of them I definitely enjoyed. I feel like there was a whole new kind of life breathed uh, into the franchise with some of the later installments by Eidos in Montreal, the Mankind Divided and those installments. But there was also there was a misstep also along the
Mhm.
way. So not all of them were good.
Uh, well, I was gonna say, I mean, it was either a port of the original or a port of the first sequel for PlayStation 2, and I was thinking about buying it, but it was kind of expensive. But they just put it on the kind of PlayStation equivalent of Game Pass.
Mhm.
So I downloaded it the other day, so I'm thinking about playing that. But
And
very
hopefully it's with the updated textures and all that stuff, because that's
hopefully,
been that's been updated throughout the years. It's pretty rough if you're playing it in the exact same way that it was when it got released in 2000, even though in my memory it looked amazing. But every time I've reinstalled it because someone mentions it and I just feel like I need to go and reinstall it. If I just go to the original one and I start playing it, I'm like, whoa, this is so much simpler than I remember. But the same goes with all these other games. Like when I
yeah.
played Doom and Quake and Wolfenstein, the first games of those series, they felt like I was just in reality. And then if you play them again today, you're like, how was I able to even see a face out of this thing, out of this blob on the screen?
Orvar, thank you so much again for doing this interview with me. I really enjoyed listening to you talk about your experiences, and this is a valuable conversation. But before we head off, do you have any final thoughts or words or anything?
No, I mean, I'll say the same. I really enjoyed our chat. It was great to kind of look back and just kind of, yeah, just think through kind of how I got here. Some of it feels like it was meant to be, just like the way that we've kind of led into talking about, my favorite game of all time. And it kind of was the thing that helped me make a decision to go where I've gone, and to have just gotten a chance to walk that path with someone is a lot of fun. So I had a lot of fun with it. So thank you as well.
Well, I'm glad you had fun. I really appreciate it. But again, everybody, this was Orvar Halldorsson. Thank you so much.